Welcome, everybody, to the RAAD Life, the only talk radio show that takes you along with host and age explorer Rod Gantos on his continuing journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older. The RAAD Life is brought to you this week by Your Home for a Lifetime, a company dedicated to empowering you to stay safely, independently, and comfortably in your own home. And now here is your host, Rod Gantos.
Why are you pointing your finger at me?
I'm trying to get you to stop talking to your guest here.
It's a radio show. It's a talk radio show. I'm supposed to be talking.
Save it for the air.
Man, you know, some people are really very controlling. You know, just because I asked him for a special extra spot this week.
Yes, and we gave it to you.
And you gave it to me. I do, first and foremost, you know, just a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to acknowledge Mr. Paul Roberts. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. You're going to give yourself your own applause?
Well, somebody has to.
Okay. So anyway, while Paul is fidgeting around trying to find his audience there to applaud him, I do want to recognize Mr. Paul Roberts here for actually extending the courtesy of an extra hour.
There's the crowd. Let him in. Please, back. No,
stop. No, stop. Okay, don't stop. But I do want to acknowledge Paul for always being supportive, always giving me latitude to pursue things a little bit differently. God knows he basically has probably gotten gray hairs doing it over the last 4.5 years.
Yes.
But it's something, we have fun, right? We have fun.
We have fun.
You
know what's fun, though, is that you threw out a challenge just casually. You had a candidate, and it was mostly, as I gather it, not so much you loved his positions, although you might, but you just loved the fact he's a young guy and he's running for office. Go.
I'm all for encouraging people to get engaged in civic responsibility and run.
Kids never get engaged in anything.
Otherwise, how do you grow in that role? No, you don't.
And from that casual conversation, which really was about that, all of a sudden you said, and if anybody else wants to come on, hey, I live in San Clemente. We'd love to highlight a race. And I thought, that's never been done here in Orange County. Where do you have multiple candidates for city council of any level get a chance to come and talk to their constituents?
And I will take this opportunity again to add to that is that, again, you know, we're approaching 2020. It's an election year. Door is open, people. We had a dozen people that were running for office last election cycle, of which 8 people got elected, everything from D.C. to school district. And I really want to know. I mean, I am a voter. I live in this county. I live in San Clemente. I want to know not only what you got to say to me about why I should not vote for the other guy, but why don't you tell me what you've got as your platform and your vision for whatever that is that you're basically the seed that you're going after.
So today you brought in the fourth. Is this the fourth candidate?
4 out of 5, yeah.
4 out of 5. So
and the fifth one, it's been crickets. I haven't heard anything.
You're not interested. All right. So welcome to the show, Mickey.
I mean, I'm really nice. Am I not, Mickey? I'm a nice guy, right? I don't know why people would.
Except
Except
you stepped on his name. I'm trying to get it. It's Michael Mickey McLane.
That's
Mickey McLane.
Yes,
there we go.
Yes. I put that correctly on the teaser for the show earlier.
I was trying to say it, and you cut him off.
And Mickey, I do want to ask you to do something, though. Would you please take off your pin that you have on that says Mickey for City Council? Because, Paul, what did I also promise
you said you would, even though you're not sure who you're going to vote for, you put everybody's pin or badge.
No, you're giving that to me.
He's going to wear it.
I promised that anybody who would be on the show, that I would basically wear their T-shirt. Now, one person, Jackson, showed up with a T-shirt. So I wore the T-shirt. And I got accused for, you know, if you wear somebody's T-shirt, I mean, that's it. You're married. I mean, you know.
Right.
I mean, my God, you know, it's like, you know, the Pope has blessed you with that relationship. You can never get out of that, you know. If you get out of that, you're like caught between, you know, hell and heaven. What's that, purgatory, Paul?
So we're going to put this on. Now people are going to see, they're going to be confused. They saw you wearing a Jackson T-shirt. Now it's a Mickey.
I also wore D. Coleman's face and bumper sticker. D showed up. He didn't have a T-shirt because, you know, God knows that campaigns should actually be running on merit and not on just pocketbook. And if you don't have the money to run T-shirts, I'm okay with it. So he shows up. He's got a face cutout and a bumper sticker. And I happen to wear.
You wear the bumper sticker on your shirt.
I wore both of them. I looked like some soccer team with some endorsements, right? It was like, you know. And then Christina showed up earlier this week on Wednesday, and she didn't have anything, and I wasn't going to take her pearls or anything that she was wearing or pins on it. But, you know, I'm like, and I didn't tell him this because I saw him wearing that. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to be able to put something on today. So here you go. See? I'm a man of my word. I said I would wear something for whatever
I
candidate.
never
we show.
thought I'd see you wear anybody else's buttons or pins or anything else. That's going to be on social media all over the place now.
You know what's going to happen, right? I'm going to get called wishy-washy, unable to make a decision, right? Split personalities. They might actually
partisan.
They might even send
partisan.
Even partisan. Oh my God!
Well, that's really hitting below the belt.
Take it back, Mickey.
No. The other people might stretch it. Mickey McLane won't.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know what? I appreciate you. I appreciate you making the time to be here. And again, as Paul had said, I think it is critical. I mean, I said this when I came back from Atlanta. I'd lived in Atlanta for about three years. Came back to San Clemente. My family's on San Clemente. We've been in San Clemente. For those who are basically saying, "Well, I've never heard of you. Where you been?" I've been in San Clemente since '87. I went away, worked for an international company out of Marina del Rey for a couple of years. Went to Atlanta for a couple of years, and then came back to San Clemente because it's the best place to be. Right?
The best climate in the
world. I mean, it's almost sounds redundant, but it's the best climate.
And
in
you
the
know
world.
what? And it's such a sleepy, quiet little town that there's never any political problems. There's never any arguing. It's just one big happy family.
Where's he been?
He's being facetious. Where's he been? I'll tell you where he's been. He's in the back 40s of where's it? Rancho Far Away. What is it?
Rancho Far Away. Rancho Mission Viejo.
He lives in Rancho Mission Viejo, an unincorporated part of Rancho Mission Viejo. The only safe place for Paul Roberts to live, actually. Right? He cannot be in an incorporated zone.
I am stunned at the level of acrimony, accusations, and anger that this race is
generating. And you heard a lot of. I mean, Christina was sharing some stuff that would cause people to just absolutely. I mean, if you had a child act in the way that she shared, people have been acting, and Mickey's going to do the same.
Storming into her office and stuff here,
threatening her livelihood, all this stuff. If a child of yours did that, you would basically, at the very least, find them counseling. At worst, they used to send them to military school, right? Well, we don't condone spanking, even though Mr. Paul Roberts is a baby boomer and maybe he would. But that being said, yes, it's ugly. And I saw you, man. Paul, you were sitting in that chair while Christina was unloading some of this stuff, and you were like, "What? Sleepy San Clemente?" I mean, we don't have this in the back 40.
It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way politics seems to have devolved everywhere in the country, even down to the local level.
So I really wanted to hear from the candidates that are running, because it's a special election that's due to the fact that we actually lost our mayor and city council member, Steve Schwartz, and he passed away while he was still in his seat, and it opened up this by mail only special election that actually concludes, I'm guessing is the word, Mickey, like November 5th.
Correct.
Right. And the ballots are already out.
Yes.
I think they came out like about last week, maybe?
Well, I think they sent out in 4 or 5 batches beginning on the 7th and the last one on the 21st.
Okay, so there was the last batch went out already, basically.
Yes.
And is everybody assuming, as I would assume, that because it's a special election, there's nothing else on the ballot, not many people show up, and it's by mail, and people forget it and set it aside? I mean, the turnout has got to be expected to be, I would think, very low, unless all this controversy has changed that. But
well, I kind of agree with both points that because it's a special election with no other issues going on, it's likely to be a small turnout. However, because of the acrimony, as you pointed out, and all the ugliness that's been going on, I think it's gotten people's attention. And there's something about the mail-in only ballot when you're sitting at your dining room table, as opposed to having to get up and go to a precinct or something like that. Right. I have a feeling that people will exercise more of their own emotions and feelings, and I'd like to think that will end up being in my favor.
Has anybody ever tried I've never heard of an election that was strictly mail. I'm assuming they did that to save costs.
That's right. It's an evolution. It's probably going to be a few years, and then it's all going to be online then.
Yeah. I wonder if, I'm going to put it out there for people who are listening, and I'm going to put it out to you gentlemen too. If I was to dress up for Halloween this year with something that's relevant to the way this campaign has been run in San Clemente, what should I dress up with? Should I like go around with a machete to my waist, for example, or
yeah, that'd be appropriate.
Or I'm looking for ideas, folks. So would you please reach out to me? And with that machete, would that come with a Jason mask, or what exactly?
I want to meet this.
I mean,
guy.
is it a dull knife, or is it just pointless? I mean, I don't know.
Every single one of your candidates has talked about some guy that you all know now in this city who shows up at city council meetings.
So guess what I did?
Machete.
So guess what I did, Paul? I brought in the candidate that's running that was motivated by something relevant to that. So Mickey, first question. out, okay? And I want to know about your background. But let's just say, okay, I'm sitting in front of you. I'm thinking, you're reading, some really heady stuff. You obviously are an avid
tell
reader
us what it is.
with Napoleon in Russia. Okay, so if you think if anybody thinks this gentleman over here is not into military strategy, think again. Okay, all right. But you all of a sudden decide to run for city council. So what got you to actually run for city council?
Well, there was the Mr. Machete incident itself that started.
The Mr. Machete incident.
That I started, paying attention to, and I have to say I was shocked by it. As Jubal Hershaw said, I'm shocked only by that which offends me ethically. I was offended ethically by it. But these things happen all the time.
Paul, we just got schooled.
All right, no, because this is also for people who don't live in the area. Tell me about Mr. Machete quickly. Why does he show up? What does he do?
Well, the basic story is that he saw, he says, one of the homeless people who have come to San Clemente carrying a machete. So he asked the police officer, "Hey, is it okay?" But he says, "I can't arrest anybody for just carrying it. It's not illegal." Well, apparently he translated that into carrying it into the San Clemente City Council race. Now, I have to say, I don't know the gentleman, but I do want to say that, he maintains that he was doing it in the best interest of the citizens, and he was there to make a demonstration. Hey, look, if I can carry it here and the homeless can carry it there, there's going to be problems. Well, it turned out, regardless of what his intentions were, a bad decision because it blew up in his face. And the police got involved, et cetera, et cetera. So the police had to go talk with him, et cetera. Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, Mickey, that, if you're going to claim that you're doing something out of fear for your safety, and if you're going to basically claim that is the only motivation. The only motivation to basically do so. Otherwise, you would never in a million years think to arm yourself with a deadly weapon and go into a public official meeting, right?
It's an offensive weapon. It's an offensive weapon.
It's an intimidation weapon, right? You don't show. It's like somebody showing up to to a city gate with a siege weapon and saying, "I'm just here to say hello," okay? And in fact, even worse, I'm worried that you guys might rob me, so I just showed up with a siege weapon or a battling ram, right? Okay, and just a bit of advice. You may not want to put your moniker on social media using the word machete after your first name. It's like, is it on your sports jersey too? Are you basically introducing yourself by your first name or by machete?
Yeah.
You can't claim to be the victim if all you are doing is branding yourself with this.
This kind of cheap
or is it brandishing? I don't know when it comes to
this kind of behavior. I just think it's outrageous, is what I think. And so, to finish up answering my question, answering your earlier question, please. Then when I saw on the June 4th City Council meeting, anybody wants to see it, it's at 1 hour and 13 minutes into this 5.5 hour marathon.
Give the date again.
June 4th, the 4th of June. And so when this gentleman got up there to defend Mr. Machete, that was the turning point for me, because he treated the offending party on the city council
Councilman Kathy Ward,
with great ugliness. Challenged her, said she was mentally unbalanced, and says, well, if you're having a negative feeling about it and negative gut reaction to about it, well, how about this gut reaction? Are you sweating now? Well, how about now? It was just so outrageous. It was one of the ugliest things I'd ever seen. I wrote in one of my flyers that, as far as I'm concerned, that is just behavior that, he was thuggishly ingallant, is how I put it.
And I told Mickey when he shared with me that's what he referred to it, that he was being way too nice.
Well...
But then again, he's a gentleman, so I get that.
That's my idea. I'm trying to keep things even, but at the same thing, I cannot let ethical issues be ignored.
Did you explain to them what thuggishly
they're going to have to go to the dictionary on their own on that.
And I don't mean to be further inflammatory, but I'm a student of history, and I can't help but think of this. And I know this is an extreme example, and people immediately turn me off, but it does. This is what the brown shirts did. And this is what
brown shirts. For those who don't know, Mickey, would you like to educate some people here?
We're talking about the group that kind of became gangs essentially in the latter 30s in Germany
or the black shirts in Italy. Yeah,
the long knives, the black shirts in Italy under Mussolini. Yeah. It was basically
intimidation.
Basically, the mob that was basically the strong arm, if you will, or the weapon of choice by the fascists.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, with all respect to your positions on that, we're not quite there yet.
No, no,
Okay,
but closer. And I'm not trying to go Antifa and I get all this other standing fashion, but I'm just saying.
No, but if you don't speak out,
this
you know,
is clearly an intimidation by groups, by mobs. Whether and left can do this, the right can do this.
motivated
we're turning into this.
Motivated by power, influence,
Yeah,
exercising
fear and
domination of
intimidation,
people.
right.
Yeah, fear and intimidation.
and don't forget the melodrama. Okay, everything is so dramatic and so inflated. You know, I mean, one of the people running says he wants to take back the city. Well, he hasn't been around long enough to know what to take it back from. So
you know, that's really funny because some of the slogans, like, you know, protecting quality of life, and I'm looking around going, you know what? Yeah, you're right, because quality of life in San Clemente just sucks. I mean, the sky is falling, Chicken Little, right? I mean, it's just
And again,
horrible.
take it
like
back
lock your doors, hide your women. You know, the barbarians are at the gate. Oh my God, we've got 35 homeless people. I mean, we need to build a wall.
Is that really it? It's the population of homeless that somehow have taken over.
It's
in
an
camps,
excuse on every level. If you really were
suddenly-
motivated, we're finding solutions. We've been dealing with the same issue locally for at least 2 or 3 election cycles. If you're really motivated in finding a sustainable solution, you would be able to do that. And if it meant that you put your neck out as an elected official and showed some cojones and leadership and basically dealt with the problem that you were basically hired by the people to do in your seat, rather than worrying about whether you're going to get reelected or not, guess what? We would have dealt with it to some degree of success or the other. I'm not saying we would have resolved it, but we would have, we would have been better off today if somebody actually stopped kicking the can down the road and did what needed to be done.
Yeah. Well, you know, I last Monday night I went to the conference held by the United Way at the San Clemente Presbyterian Church on ending homeless.
And that's
now,
their
where
initiative.
were my fellow candidates?
Yeah.
This is extremely important. They have a step-by-step approach that has worked in many other places. They pointed out that their step-by-step approach in dealing with the homeless, getting them off the street, keeping them from being homeless, has been supported by every presidential administration since George Sr., including up to the present. And so, where were my colleagues? Where were my fellow candidates at that meeting? Is what I want to know.
Let me point out that we've had Sue Parks in here, the new head of United Way, in here numerous times talking about that, and it's an extraordinary initiative where United Way isn't just collecting money and passing out anymore. They're trying to actually be the lead agency to pull the left and right, the police and the citizens, the activists, the churches, and everybody together. You
know why everybody is basically now involved in trying to solve the problem?
You just think it's because it's money the consultants can make more money.
It's not only money that consultants can make. It's also because they've been shamed publicly.
Well, maybe.
That shaming happened when you basically had an encampment that kept growing on the Santa Ana riverbed, okay? And people were driving by it. You could not hide it anymore. It was not out of sight, out of mind anymore, and you had to basically engage. Otherwise, how are you going to basically justify that you've got over $100 million sitting in the coffers of the supervisors and you're not doing anything with the homeless issue, okay? And yes, there's money to be had, so now, yes, please include me. But to be honest, unless the solution is a sustainable one, guess what happens? We're going to face the same dilemma down the road.
Right.
So I want to hear what Mickey's position is and what Mickey would do about it. If they pick you, what do you do?
Well, regarding the homeless situation, you're now speaking. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I follow the United Way's example. What they are leading is it's called "quote unquote" housing first. If you get the people into housing, then you have a lower rate of their mental illness. You are able to address drug abuse, etc. There are crime is reduced, etc. Okay, so the next question is, well, where can this happen? State law requires that every city, to deal with the homeless, have to provide them with a space, not a building. There is no building in San Clemente that I have ever found or thought through that will house them. So the next step is for maybe the cities of Cameron Capistrano and Dana Point and Laguna Niguel and Mission Viejo maybe to find a suitable place for them to be. There is the money there, And not only is the money there, but as you guys already know from talking with the United Way people, they will help. They will do the funding. They will help at every single stage, negotiating with landlords, etc.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate because we keep hearing about this regional solution.
Yes.
Okay, which is fine. I'll play along. Regional South County solution, great. Okay. San Clemente acts like, we don't want it in San Clemente. So just bear with me here, Mickey, okay?
All right.
What happens when Laguna Niguel says, I don't want it in Laguna Niguel, and San Juan Capistrano says, I don't want it in San Juan Capistrano, and Dana Point says, I don't want it in Dana Point, okay? What happens then? Because if San Clemente is entitled to say, not in my city, and every other city says it's not in my city, where does that regional center go?
It comes down probably to the building itself. Excuse me. It comes down to the building itself, I think. There is simply no building in San Clemente, so it's not like we're saying not in my backyard. There is no backyard in San Clemente for that. So it's probably going to come down to where is the building, where would be the best place to put this building, and this has worked in Santa Ana, excuse me, and in several other places too, according to the United Way people.
Some cities have said yes. Fullerton seems to be moving in that direction, building a regional center, and whether it's because they want the money or whether they just believe in the cause, I don't know.
Yeah.
But.
Well, thank you for bringing up the money situation, because we know that's always the issue in the end, okay?
Right.
Who's going to fund it and all that. So in the lecture from the United Way, they talked about hotels that had been taken over by the city to house the people, and in there, one of the people has to be hired to be sort of monitor things. So it comes down to the building. There is just simply no building. Now, if somebody said, "Well, you could just build the building," righto. There's a 3-year delay right there, just to think about the funding of it and the building of the building. Where would it be, etc.
But what if you just zoned an area that allows somebody to come in and actually build a building that provides those support services? Because there are development companies that basically are engaged, and their whole business plan is to provide those kind of houses.
You mentioned one of them at the last one.
Yes, absolutely.
I forgot the name of it.
I'll remember in a minute.
Your
Christina,
candidate.
if you're listening, please call and give us
I'd never heard of it. There are companies that will go they
it-
figured out a for-profit
absolutely.
model of how to do this.
It'll
or
come to
whatever.
me in a minute. Okay.
Well, it's true that something like that could happen, but the next question is, where? Where would it happen? The areas that are now under consideration are I wouldn't say under consideration, that might be too strong, but people are thinking through a section of land right across from San Clemente High School. Mm-hmm. Okay, is that going to be one?
People won't
Then
like that.
people are also thinking about a little bit further back in the more industrial area. Okay,
San Clemente.
look, I have no qualms about pointing out that the human character is not going to work. You put those folks back, I don't care how luxurious it is, they're stuck in the middle of an industrial zone. They're not going to stay. You can't lock them up. They're going to sit around and walk back.
Yeah, you need
all
support
those.
services.
You can even have those.
And
they're in an industrial area.
Now
talk
talk about what San
Clemente
Clemente has done, because Rod's told me a couple of times, maybe I got this wrong, that their answer to the homeless was, we're going to take a vacant lot and put up a fence.
They did,
really?
but that's no longer the case. That's now been.
That's
ended.
right. We put it up. It was at the cost of $300,000 a year. Guess what? They leave and just move across the street. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are dealing with a lot of laws that we're dealing, to deal with.
It's not illegal to be homeless.
That's right. Yes. So we have to deal with the human character, and I'll tell you what. In the homeless population, the human character is very shaky. We know that there's a substantial amount of people who have mental illness, who have drug problems and stuff like that.
They're not there because they haven't had some trauma in their life. They've either been traumatized, or they are victimized, or they are alcoholized or drugized or whatever.
The thing,
right.
Let me just say this though. And we talk about this issue a lot because it's currently a very big issue for the whole county and for San Clemente and other communities. But one of the things that always seems to be missing in the conversation is the fact that how many of those people actually woke up one morning and said, "You know what? I just want to be homeless." Like we don't
not
address
many. Maybe a few, but not many.
We don't
Yeah.
address that human condition situation very well.
Well, we
at all.
don't. We don't. We're sorry for them
It's
to get
too
out
messy,
of here.
It's
Yeah.
too complex. It doesn't fit in.
And it doesn't seem to be easy to solve. If they're on drugs, if they're on alcohol, if they're just persistently, if they're whacked out or something.
What about seniors that basically become homeless because they've had one medical bill too many?
I get it. No, I
know there are those out there, but you're right about that other category of people, that some people just want to be homeless. You can do everything. You can give them a luxury appointment. They just want to be left alone and out there by themselves. And
whatever
it's
reason,
for whatever reason, if any reason.
You know what they used to call those guys? Cowboys.
Yeah, okay.
or
Sure,
bums or bums or whatever,
Or,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah, right. All I'm saying is this is a very complex problem that seems to be growing throughout the county, partly because we haven't addressed it before, partly because we don't have mental health institutions to take them in anymore, and we ignore drug and alcohol, partly because housing is so expensive it's easier to fall off and find yourself homeless. All these issues are compounding it, and all the cities want to do is push them away.
Hey, Paul, because of the nature of this topic, and I want to be fair to everybody who wants to call in, could you give the number out for people to call if they
Sure,
have any
if
questions
somebody's
for Mickey?
listening, this is a special recording, so I don't know how many people are listening at the moment, but if you want to chime in, 949-330-7761. That's 949-330-7761. Operators standing by.
Yeah,
And I would like to add that my phone number and my email
please,
address
yeah.
are on record with the city. So anybody wants to call me directly after this broadcast or any other time.
And how do they
Please do
reach your
so.
campaign if they want to hear more? And give us the sites and the places. How if they want to learn more about
I'm on Facebook, and there is Mickey McLane at Outlook.com.
and spell it in case McLean could be spelled with lots of extra letters in it or not.
Well said, thank you. McLane.
Okay, the simplest
The
version.
simplest version. That's exactly right. Yes. Okay. And I'll even give out my telephone number.
Sure.
I mean,
Whatever
it's
you wanna
public,
give
know.
out, yeah.
It's 949-466-2332.
So why did
That's
you?
466-2332.
So what else do you want to talk about? Why you? Why Mickey and not one of the 14 other people?
And give me
running?
All right, well,
some
let me-
background about you,
Yeah,
too, Mickey.
let me get back just a moment to talk about what the city council has already done. I have to say that the city council moved very nicely, I think,
Yeah.
when they passed the ordinance that if you want to be homeless in San Clemente, you have to have some sort of tie to San Clemente.
Right.
Okay. When they implemented that, well, about a third of the homeless were taken away. Guess how they got there? Well, we had to drive them there, of course, because they can't walk. So
But the idea is if we're going to support you, you have to show some connection to the community. here.
that's right.
Which
Of
is
course,
very fair.
2 days later, a judge came out with a decision criticizing the cities in lower Orange County, obviously including San Clemente,
South
that
County.
were dumping the homeless then back in Laguna Beach, which is where some of them wanted to go. So it's a complete tangle, and but the city council has tried, and I have to compliment them for that.
So why you? Why you running? What would you change? About
well-
this or other things?
Well, we've already talked about the homeless issue. That I'm looking for a regional place is what I would support, and following the Housing First program that has been supported by so many presidential administrations and is run by the United Way. So that's one issue right there. But the main issue that I'd like to get across to the voters is that I'm trying to get away from all this acrimony and all this ugliness that has happened. I'm from the South, and I might have grown up or started life anyway on a dead-end dirt road in the South. But we always maintained at least a veneer of gentility.
Right.
And so I have to say, like I said, I said earlier, I'm kind of shocked by all this ugly behavior. It's also self-indulgent and self-serving. My job would be to try to work with both sides. I want to be the bridge. That's what I'm calling myself.
Now
the
that
bridge.
it's out in the open, and we're having this open mini kind of civil war, however dramatic you want to make this sound, it's
Well,
angry.
it physically manifested itself on the corner of Ola Vista and Del Mar last
Yeah,
weekend.
people
didn't it?
shouting.
Rather.
Yeah.
So if it's gotten to that point where it's really this could be serious, this is dangerous, this is scary, this is not productive. How does Mickey bridge this? How do you get him to calm down after the election and talk to you?
Well, it's a matter of fair leadership on an issue-by-issue basis. When the incident occurred last Sunday at the quote-unquote free speech corner, best I could do was stand aside and let these people
Just
have
very,
at
very
it.
briefly to explain to people who
explain
don't
what
know.
happened,
Yeah.
right?
Well, very briefly, apparently a person who objected to the advertising and in so-called endorsements of one of the candidates got into an argument with him, and such that candidate or his people, I'm not exactly sure which, called the police. Okay, so here come two police cars, lickety split, come flying up there. The whole place with this woman yelling and people being upset. The whole thing looked like a crime scene. It was outrageous, and I was greatly offended by the whole thing. It was a huge mistake to call the police. And we're talking about the main drag of San Clemente. We got people coming coming back and forth from the restaurants and from farmers market, which is right there. We got families, grandparents with their kids and
People
everything.
sitting in a restaurant right across from
That's
like
right.
feet away.
Yeah, they come running to the window. What happened? What happened? It was an outrageous moment and was extremely unfortunate.
But it's probably for the drama. It's probably for the flyers. It's probably for the photo ops. It suddenly elevates and creates a talking point that they can whip up a certain group of people on both sides.
But I think to Mickey's point, and we had a little chance to talk about this before the show. What he's presenting is that this is not okay. And there is an old adage, and I shared this with Mickey as we were walking. He said, when people show you what they're all about, believe them.
Yeah, well, we don't tend to do that. We think it's all just for show, but when they get elected, it'll be normal.
Well, but just believe them. If this is how Mickey, you can take it. But you then said to me, well, if this is how they're acting.
Yes, that's right. If these are as the way they're behaving now with these attacks back and forth, attack ads, et cetera, is there any doubt that they'll carry this ugly tenor to city council if they get elected?
Why would they? Why
wouldn't they?
If they were successful
worked, yeah.
in actually making this work and getting there, why would they stop that?
Exactly,
Yeah,
and because as I say before, it's self-indulgent in my opinion. It's self-centered, and they get a little bit of traction on it, and they get elected. I would have to say that would be unfortunate.
So
I'm the right candidate because I'm trying to even things out. I do not dramatize stuff. I do not call the cops. I do not, attack the other people warrantlessly. Although, as I was saying earlier, certain ethical issues, like the guy who defended Mr. Machete and was abusive towards Miss Ward, certain ethical issues cannot be ignored.
Right. So who is Mickey, and how do we know? I applaud your effort to try and be the bridge. How do we know you can be the bridge? Who are you, and where did you come from?
And what's your background like
Right.
that gives you the ability?
Well, at these 7 decades, I've done a lot of stuff. I really was in real estate for 20 years before I am now retired. Now, I was in 20 years. I tell you what, there's no other business that's better for finding the pulse of a city. Who's coming, who's going, why they're coming and going, what the businesses are involved in, etc. So I have that leadership with me. I have done pretty much. I've been around so long that there's over half a century between me and one of the other candidats. So I've been around so long. I've done more stuff than I can even think up right now.
When did you come to San Clemente? You said
I came 25 years ago. I used to throw a big party back in Virginia that cost a lot of money, live music, catering, etc.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to save the money and go traveling. So I was traveling, and I met my wife. It was kind of love at first sight. So, people come, as you have really as explained to me, people come to San Clemente for basically 2 reasons, love or work. Well, mine was love. Mine was love. So we fell in love immediately, and, even though it never occurred to me that I would live anywhere but Norfolk, Virginia, 8 months later, I moved driving a U-Haul across country.
Is that really where you live? Because we set off, and I went to school. I went to law school for a year at William & Mary, and then became the disc jockey at that was my biggest gig at WMYK K94, which was at the time the rock and roll station in Norfolk, Virginia. Even though the transmitter was in Moyock, MYK, across the border there.
Well, I'm going to pat myself on the back and say that because I was in radio and we kind of broke new ground in around 1970.
You got the voice.
You followed me.
I did.
I set it up for you.
You paved the way, my friend.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You paved the way. Well, that was the birth. People don't remember. Now we get aside quickly here. But that was the birth of
I got a pair of battling Irishmen on the radio on a Friday.
People
this
don't
is
realize,
good. I'm going to sit back and watch that.
People don't realize that in the around 1970, FM radio was born. Everything was AM up to that point. And FM was the forgotten extra bandwidth, and they created a new type of music where they would play 3 or 4 records in a row, and then they'd talk. They'd play whole albums. It was a whole different way to approach music than the top 40 hits and the hey there, hi there, ho there, the goofy DJs of the AM days. So that was an exciting period to get into radio. Something new was being born. Just like this feels to me a lot like it, this podcasting, live podcasting, whatever you want to call it. Has that same live energy.
So how did you go from being in radio in Norfolk to basically then becoming involved in law enforcement?
Well, I know it's an unusual thing, but I was a classical actor also during this period.
Shakespeare.
That's exactly right. So I was a Shakespearean actor at the best theater, the classic theater in Virginia. So, indeed, there was one time when I was a uniformed police officer, and I got in a tussle with this gentleman. I had to arrest him for disorderly conduct and assaulting a police officer. Well, about 2 months later, I got into the same problem with his brother. So, when I'm in court, the judge says, he said, Mr. McLane, I think that, I'm observing you. I think you're a Shakespeare-spouting pugilist is what's going on here.
Wow.
So I didn't take it as an insult in any way. Norfolk is kind of a small town. You might remember this, Paul, that, there's a lot of minorities that don't seem to participate much. We have a huge amount of military.
Huge.
So the rest of us it's kind of a small town. So we all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
You have a love affair with a woman. 5 years later, she marries a lawyer. 5 years later, he becomes a judge and you're working for him.
Tidewater. They called it the Tidewater area.
Tidewater. It's Hampton Roads now.
Exactly.
Call it Hampton Roads.
And
now.
why don't you talk like a Southerner? Where's the accent?
Well, my parents were both from the north, and then I went to a private school where there were a lot of people that were involved in the military.
Yeah, tons of military.
I was probably the poorest kid in the school. I mean, I had to hitchhike back and forth, whereas some of my fellow students there were driving their sports car convertibles back and forth.
Well, it's the East Coast. People don't realize it's other than San Diego, it's the East Coast version of San Diego. It's where all the carriers and the fleets and everything. And Norfolk and San Diego are the two big.
Didn't Norfolk make it into a Billy Joel song?
Oh, I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
I think.
Well, Paul already knows that Norfolk got into a Chuck Berry song.
Oh yeah,
I left my home in Norfolk, Virginia, Tidewater for 1009.
You always would say Norfolk, like a Yankee. Come on, you got to say Norfolk.
Norfolk.
Yeah,
I guess I've gotten away from it in the 25 years.
Damn Yankees here. All right. All right,
that's
your background.
And then you told me that you had run for sheriff.
That's right. That's exactly right. The this constitutional office of sheriff looked like it was going to be vacant, and very unusually, the sheriff at the time said he was not going to endorse anyone. I said, bingo, that's me. I can get in there.
This is in Virginia?
This is in Norfolk, Virginia. Yes, okay. And it really is a very tough job. I called it in my position there the toughest law enforcement job in Virginia, and it's very serious. These were life and death issues going on. I mean, during the entire campaign, 3 people committed suicide in Norfolk jail cells. So, this is not just fluff or, arguing over an endorsement or something. These are life and death issues. So I felt obligated to run. It was a long campaign, and I greatly enjoyed it, and had some very, very many great moments. I got to meet, for example, Lady Bird Johnson and both her daughters. One of her daughters was the First Lady of Virginia. Married Chuck Robb, as you recall,
Governor
at the
Robb.
White House.
Yeah, Governor Robb.
Yeah, so I got to meet Rosalind Carter, and so for a guy who started life on a dead end dirt road, it was pretty impressive to me.
For a Yankee to meet all these Southerners, come on, I don't know.
Exactly, that's right. Yes.
All right, so you're running for city council. What do you think you're going to win? Are people going to support you?
Well, I think I have a good chance. You mentioned another candidate who spoke with you earlier on the show here. I've never met her.
Yeah.
Okay. She doesn't show up at the debates, maybe for the same reasons you were talking about, because of abusive behavior by other people. I don't know. I've never met her. So
that's what she shared with us when she was on. Yeah.
Seems to me that she's kind of faded in the background. We now have another candidate who has been under investigation for buying votes, and I say that quote unquote with the understanding that it was kind of tongue in cheek. Whether that'll be a defense or not, I don't know. And now I have another candidate who is under investigation for improper campaign work. And there is the last candidate, both very strong now. They have money, they have signs all over the place, they have party backing, et cetera, et cetera. I consider those, they might even be negatives in the overall. So I think I do definitely have a chance. I think.
And what's so Jackson's how old? Jackson's 20 or something?
Yeah, that's right. I was always wondering, he lives at home. What do you suppose his curfew is?
Oh, ouch. All right.
Sorry, I couldn't say it. I couldn't.
So we've got a diverse group of people from 20-year-olds, and you threw out that you must be in your 70s. You're in your 7th decade. So
it's definitely a fascinating time, and I look at San Clemente and what's going on in San Clemente as a reflection of a bigger situation. Because if anybody's been watching even the debates on the Democratic side of things. There, you have these sort of there's this ageism thing that's going on. There, you got sort of the young guard, you got the older candidate, the more seasoning and stuff. It's kind of a fascinating time, this election cycle. And I think it's going to echo even more so by 2020. But yeah, I mean, you're right, Paul. We do have quite a range of candidates that are running.
You've got one woman running out of 5. You've got a senior citizen and a high school student. That's a pretty diverse group. Just right there. And the other two, we had D in here. I don't know the other gentleman. You said he's.
We don't know.
We don't know. Okay. Well, we haven't had him in here. But so I guess what is San Clemente? Maybe Rad can address this. San Clemente doesn't see itself as a radical confrontational community.
But I've told you this, and Jimmy, Mickey, you've been in town long enough. The town is very engaged. Like for a small town, it's really very engaged. And when you were sharing with what your experience with Norfolk, as far as people know each other's business because it's such a small thing.
Right, that's the South.
So one of the fun repetitive stories that you heard generation upon generation shared in San Clemente, and I did not grow up or go to high school in San Clemente, but I know a lot of people that did, and that are now in their like maybe 50s, probably even like closing in on 60. Their shared experience has been that if you messed up in the north side of town, your parents found out about it before you got home in the south part of town, right? So this community is actually very engaged, and in part, I think, because we physically are sort of surrounded. We've got the harbor on one side, you got the hills on the other, you got Pendleton on one side, you got the ocean on the other. It's like a little microcosm, and we tend to be. And plus, you have the layer of, Ole Hansen and his connection with Teddy Roosevelt, and then the Nixon and the Western White House. There's certain patinas and layers that go beyond just a small, provincial, end-of-the-road, last community in Orange County that give us almost a little bit of an international flavor. That being said, I will repeat, I would rather live in a community that is over-engaged than one that is not engaged. And there are times when I wish we weren't as engaged as we are, or as nasty to one another as we are, and definitely there is no excuse for somebody showing up with a deadly weapon at an elected
offensive
weapon, and to then basically somehow legitimize a unacceptable behavior in the middle of the street in the middle of the day, where basically people that are visiting the town. I mean, how do you run for a city office and sit there and not try to intervene when you have a situation where visitors are eating in your restaurants and they're literally, they didn't sign up for lunch and a show, but they ended up with lunch and a show, then not the one that they would have basically paid money for.
No, it's Pirates Theater.
A bad show, yes.
Has Mr. Machete endorsed somebody? Is he
maybe by extension. The reason I say that is there was a very ugly attack ad against one of the other candidates, not me, one of the other candidates, and a full-page ad probably cost $1,500 or something, and he was one of the signatories on it.
So maybe he is part of another campaign.
Well, seems so.
All right, so when this all fleshes out, and what's the date again? November?
Well, the deadline for a postmark on your ballot is the 5th of November.
All right.
So it's coming up.
When this fleshes out, will peace prevail, or will this just be the next round for...
Well, it depends on who's elected. I mean, if I'm elected, which I think I have a strong chance to be, it will be over. Because I'm just not tolerating it. I mean, I'm not putting up with it. I'm going to ignore a lot of this ugliness. There is simply no reason for this self-indulgent behavior. It's failure-oriented. It's failure-oriented.
It's not harmless. Okay?
Right.
This is the thing. It's not harmless. We all, as a community, pay a cost for this. Okay, and if we stand there quietly and allow it to happen and not engage, guess what's going to happen in 2020?
That's what I'm saying. It'll just get worse. It's going to come back.
It's just this is a special election happening
next
in November.
Election's a year away.
It's a year away. So if we do not basically nip this kind of behavior and as a community say, absolutely not, I am not putting up with this. I don't care who you are, but if you step and what you have to offer, but if you step into this mosh pit of mess and slime,
mayhem,
okay, do I even dare say swamp? Okay.
No, don't go there.
Okay.
Ooh,
if you live in that swamp, And we, as a community, need to say, I don't care who's behind you, how much money you basically do, you do not have my vote. In fact, I will vote against you. And that is the way you send that message, because if you don't, guess what we're going to be subjected to for the next year after this election in November 2019. There's a big election coming up in 2020. And if you give by your silence, give a green light that this behavior is condonable, we're going to all suffer again for a whole year under this kind of bullshit behavior. Excuse my French. I can say that, right?
Any other issues? You only have 2 minutes left.
Paul's is not
2 minutes left. The mic is yours. Tell us why and tell us what other issues you think, other than we talked about the homeless. I'm sure there's some other ones.
And I have an announcement to make at the end. I will not say who or what is involved, but I will share something with you.
Okay, so
news breaking.
You got a mic in 2 minutes. Talk to us.
Oh, okay. Well, you asked about my leadership in the background. One of the things that I did when I first got here is started a TV show called Legends of San Clemente, where I got to meet with a lot of the local people.
Kids of Ole Hansen.
The children of Ole Hansen, and we did the videotaping right there in the not yet restored San Clemente. So I'm one of the factors. I'm one of the small hands, in all fairness, I have to say small, that had some contribution to get Casa Romantica to what it is now.
Good. Okay.
Where do people find those episodes? By the way, Mickey, I went.
About half of them are with the Historical Society. Whether they and I can't do this until afterward, but I have to negotiate with them about getting them all put up on YouTube.
Well, Rod's on the or was on.
Well, I was on the Historical Society, but I mean, absolutely, your stuff needs to get up there, because I went looking for it, and I think. Just like with Bill Thomas and his book, on Stories of San Clemente. I mean, these things, these living histories, it was
fantastic.
Invaluable.
I got to interview, for example, and when I mention these names, I haven't talked to them for a long time, so I'm not suggesting that they are endorsing me or anything.
Yeah.
But Ken Kachigian, for example, he and Diane Sawyer wrote Nixon's memoirs.
Yes.
Right. And he staged. She decided not to. I got to talk to Karch Kirillai, as you know, the #1 volleyball player in the world. He's captain of the American team 4 times, won his own gold medal, and so I was immersed and became immediately immersed in the upper ranks, you might call, of San Clemente.
Well,
so I kind of know the city inside and out.
And we know we have a lot of people that are like either great like backup musicians in the world of jazz and rock, and we have a lot of people in the sports and sports and leisure industries that all find their way to basically their swan years or their retirement years in San Clemente. Would you agree?
I would agree, and I also like to add that it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's high end. Everybody has their own story.
Absolutely.
I've talked to people. Talked to one gentleman, for example, got him on because he had a collection of old books. Mm-hmm. So we just went through every one of his old books with white gloves and everything. It was very interesting for his antique books. So everybody has their own story. It's not just the upper echelon.
So how long did you do? Sorry, Paul. I'm sorry. I'm very intrigued with this. Okay, I know. How long did you do that show?
I think it probably lasted about 3 or 4 years.
That's awesome.
And remember, it wasn't one of these things that you do every week.
Was this on like cable access or something?
That's exactly right. It was cable access. I had to go down and take a course with Cox.
Right.
They don't do that anymore because these days anybody can put anything on YouTube.
So finish. The mic is yours, Mickey.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been involved in San Clemente at so many different levels, and I'm just a huge fan of the city. I can't possibly leave, and I want it to be better. If I'm fortunate enough to win, my hope and my goal is going to be to even things out, keep them from it as being as negative as possible. But we do have careful balance there. I mean, you saw probably that there was recently a court decision that went against San Clemente for trying to cut somebody off.
Right.
So new rules have to be written, and they've got to have. My belief is that democracy works best with citizen input. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's ugly. You got to put up with it. It's like Churchill said. Democracy is a horrible way to run things, except for all the other ways.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So it's messy. Sometimes it's ugly, but my goal is to even things out as much as possible and make progress.
Well, Mickey McLane, whether you win or lose, I hope you'll stay involved. I hope you'll continue to be a voice for sanity and for saneness. And I wish you well, as we wish everybody. And San Clemente, I hope you wake up.
Thank you for standing up and being willing to be of service, because it's the thankless, thing. It's a blood sport these days. I do want to share one bit of breaking news, because I got this while I was on the air.
Okay.
So I will just say that Mr. Greg Raths, who's a friend of the show, who's been on the show before,
Mayor of Mission Viejo.
Mayor of Mission Viejo, who's also running a campaign next year. He's already in the running for a congressional seat.
Right.
Okay. Greg Raths is basically withdrawing or correcting a news of endorsement to a particular candidate in San Clemente, and actually is endorsing a different candidate in San Clemente, and that's a bit of breaking news that's happening today.
Oh, right.
Okay, and so anybody who's listening to this show, keep an eye out, because God knows it's going to hit social media all over. But that endorsement is when withdrawn, and rightfully so, given what I've heard. And he's endorsing a different candidate. So
well, the good thing
thank
about
you for sharing that, Greg. You're always welcome here.
The good thing about my situation is I don't have any endorsements. I didn't seek any endorsements. I would arrive completely untethered, unencumbered to any group or person.
City council
the whole idea
is supposed to be a non-bipartisan situation.
Yet my opponents are always talking about their national party affiliations. You know, I mean, the breaking of the rules.
But I hope you will start carrying a machete, because that works.
So if we're talking about quality of life, how about we start with civility and basically taking out all this stuff out of the political.
Come on, that's not interesting. It's theater. It's
okay. I'm just sending you. I'm sanctioning you to the back 40 of Rancho Nowhere or whatever. Anyway, thanks, Mickey, for being here.
Enjoyed it, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thanks for all the candidates who have been willing to be on this show. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Paul, for the extra time this week.
You have been listening to the RAAD Life radio show with your host and age explorer, Rad Gantos, brought to you on the one and only octalkradio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.